We call to order the November 1st council meeting and ask the clerk to conduct the roll call.
Mayor Jen Daniels.
Here.
Vice Mayor Jared Taylor.
Here.
Councilmember James Canlon.
Present.
Councilmember Eddie Cook.
Here.
Councilmember Victor Peterson.
Here.
Councilmember Bridget Peterson.
Here.
Councilmember Jordan Ray.
Present.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. So we have one item on our consent calendar, and I understand we have a request to speak on this item. Barring a staff presentation, I think we're all very familiar with this particular agenda item, but I think we'll go immediately to our request to speak.
Mayor, I'd like to invite Mary Ellen Fresquez to the podium. Mary Ellen, thank you for being here tonight. If you'll state your name, location of residence, and then the lights in front of you, as you know, will be your 3-minute cue.
Mayor Daniels and the Gilbert Town Council members, my name is Mary Ellen Fresquez. I am a resident of Gilbert. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm addressing you, even though I realize that the timing probably precludes you from any consideration regarding my concerns. I'm aware that this special meeting will most likely result in the approval of the development and the disposition agreement for the property on the northeast corner of Gilbert Road and Hernway. Approving this agreement, it seems, also solidifies the parking structure site selection. I attended a public meeting last week, which was advertised as a forum to discuss a new parking garage on the east side of the Heritage District. Those in attendance seem to be equally divided as Town and Gilbert staff, consultants/contractors, and members of the public. And the meeting began with a process discussion of how the meeting would proceed. For example, small groups at each table, leaders with lists of questions, etc. Prior to the small groups, a question from someone in attendance addressed whether or not site selection would be discussed. Jacob Ellis, I believe that's his name, assistant to the town manager, replied that most everyone liked the northernmost location on the east side of Gilbert Road. On being further questioned on what the rationale was for that decision, we were told to hold our thoughts for the smaller groups. My group, which only had 2 stakeholders in it, addressed only the site selection, but there were some relevant comments that came from our group. For instance, that Hernway location has no northern or eastern access due to the canal and private residences. The site is on the same north-south location as the existing parking structure, so the cars exiting Gilbert Road to use these garages would cause vehicular pileups since there's no offset on the entrance streets. And a site further south would have an immediate impact because of existing businesses. There would be a pull from Joe's, Bergie's, Building 313, Whiskey Row, which will come online before the yard. There were also deliberations with members at the Gilbert Chamber for many months during the spring and summer, which resulted in recommendations for more southern sites. Not only were these not mentioned, the fact that the structure will be built adjacent to the yard and 100 parking spots will be made available to this business were also not mentioned. So my feeling is that the meeting was a very poor representation of a public meeting that solicits public input because important aspects of the structure were basically a done deal. As a matter of fact, if the garage is not built adjacent to the yard, CBDG can call this contract null and void. And this was known last week, yet not mentioned to us at the meeting. So this is what I would like. A development master plan for the entire Heritage District should not continue to be developed organically. Where? And if more restaurants will be, where are they going to be? Where's the retail? Where are the rooftops? Where's the third parking structure? And are there going to be additional cultural amenities? So I urge the council and the town to be more inclusive in your early planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. You've been a longtime contributor in the town of Gilbert, and we appreciate your insight. Are there comments from the council on agenda item 1? Yes.
Mayor, I appreciate the comments from Mary Ellen. Thanks for being here. I do think that there's some questions about planning in particular. We have not had the discussion, and I know we've accelerated, and I do appreciate it, but how in the long term parking is going to be paid for. And I also recognize and appreciate and am grateful for the fact that there is a clause in here that does give us the ability to address that and include this development in that issue. However, with all that considered, I've done a lot of number crunching over the last really day or so, and pardon me because some of it I've been still crunching because I got some of the last information. But my concern is that we're committing here to build a garage that's over the life of the garage is going to cost $21 million when you consider everything, O&M and everything else, for a purchase price of land that we're selling for just a little over $1 million. Now, at one point I thought that we were making a pretty big return on investment on the land, but it turns out we bought this land for a little over $900,000. So there's not a big ROI even on the land. So if we were thinking about using that ROI to pay for the fair portion of the parking of this development, we're not even coming close. Just after 10 years, the subsidy directly to this development for parking, even when you include the revenues that we get for the land sale, will be $828,000, almost $1 million. If we keep going forward after 40 years, it'll be about a $3.8 million subsidy just for that one development. Now, if we do the same pattern for every other development who buys into space for this garage, you can see that we'd be upside down about $15 million after 40 years. And that's a really big subsidy, and I just don't think that that's necessary or appropriate. I think when we talk about growth should pay for growth, I think we should really be serious about that. And we'd have to pretty much take this development agreement and add to the sales price almost the same sales price over again. We'd almost have to double it to really even get it to pay for itself, even for that first 10 years. That doesn't even talk about if we do renewals. So with that, I think if I felt like we were close, and I could imagine a reasonable fee that we would be talking about for administrative parking permits or whatever we do with this issue in the future, I think I might be okay. But I don't think we're even close, and I think we're setting a bad precedent here. And we need to have that other discussion before we make a commitment to spend that much of tax dollars. Again, you hear staff tell us that they're paying 1/4 of the cost for the 1/4 of the garage they're using. In essence, they're paying 1/16 of the cost, and we're going to have 15/16 of this garage committed to when we sign this agreement, and that's a lot of money. And I just think that's inappropriate.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Vice Mayor Taylor.
Mayor, thank you. I think Councilmember Peterson makes a lot of important points. The concern that I have is probably more similar to what Mary Ellen said. And I've mentioned before that I think we really need to get a parking plan and a policy there so this doesn't put us crosswise with other future growth opportunities. So I'm not going to go on very long, but until we work that out, then I think I don't feel the urgency on this. I don't know, haven't been in all the discussions that you guys have, but when I ask what's the urgency to put this before actually getting a nice downtown parking master plan, and then the point about putting the parking garage, Mary Ellen, thank you for making those points. We should have done a little bit better in terms of communicating intent with the parking garage, so I appreciate you bringing that up. I think we could improve in that. That should be a lesson learned for us. But anyways, I don't feel the urgency of this until we get that, because we might be causing other problems in the downtown. So Mayor, I'll just summarize it and leave it at that, so thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Taylor. I'd just like, you want to comment?
I'm happy to. Well, thank you, Mayor. So a couple of comments, and I do agree with Mary Ellen about the lack of communication from the town on that. I know that as liaison to the chamber, we could do much better as a town disseminating information. With that being said, maybe to let the cat out of the bag a little bit, I know that when this parking garage is completed, there's already locations being looked at in farther south on Gilbert Road that will help alleviate that. And depending on what land or what property the town's able to secure, it would potentially create a nice triangle of garages. Not that that fixes this problem that you're talking about, Mary Ellen, with this location. But the other thing that I want to make a little bit clear, and I absolutely agree with Council Members Peterson and Taylor about a long-term parking solution and a parking policy. And I have said, along with others, that we don't really have a policy in place. It's actually not accurate. We do have a policy in place, which Dan and his group have been following, which is essentially the town pays for all parking in downtown. Now, we may or may not agree with that as a council, but that's the current policy that exists. And I think that we do need to have that long-term discussion. And I appreciate Patrick and Dan making that a priority for the upcoming retreat, and also just the upcoming dates where it was more kind of pushed out for a while, and now we've asked to make it extremely urgent. But I will, to Dan's credit and his team's credit, they are following the current policy, which is town pays for all parking downtown. But I do want to make sure we have a long-term plan to cover those costs, primarily the maintenance of those facilities. But with that, I'm ready to move forward, Mayor.
Thank you. And I just wanted to make 2 quick points. Dan, I think that we have put on the calendar, and Lisa, this answers the question you asked me earlier tonight. November 29th is the accelerated date that we moved up the parking conversation. We originally had a study session scheduled for that date. It was removed from our calendars, but because we asked for this to accelerate, November 29th is when we have that conversation. And I also think it's really important to acknowledge the fact that we are underway with the update of the redevelopment plan, which addresses the master plan piece of downtown in many ways. I'm not sure it's going to be, Mary Ellen, similar to what you probably remember in 2009 when we did the very extensive with ASU total downtown master plan that, as you and I both know, with the downturn of the economy, we sort of shelved that and really I think we'd all agree that the downtown has turned out better maybe than any of us had actually planned for it to go. That doesn't mean that we stopped planning. So lots of stakeholders groups underway right now for the redevelopment area, and I think that we've substantially exhausted some of the conversation here as it relates to this item. So at this point, I will, Councilmember Canlin.
Sorry.
You're great.
Just one question of staff, and I don't know if you have the answer to this. What is the economic impact that downtown's having and the projected impact of, you know, we see new office buildings going in down there and the yard coming. Is there, do we have projected economic impacts and
Mayor, members of the council, my name is Dan Henderson, and I serve as the Economic Development Director for Gilbert. In terms of Councilmember Canlin's question about the economic impact of each project is generally evaluated and put into sort of an overall figure. As it relates to this specific development and how it complements what's currently going on in the downtown, we've not done an economic impact analysis on the yard in the Heritage District. That being said, we know over a 5-year period of time, actually since 2008, sales tax collection has increased by 93%. We also know that there's been tremendous growth in the downtown, to which we can all see there's been 500 parking spaces created. There's been over 300,000 square feet of projects in development. We're constantly looking at the impacts of those projects and what they have going on in the downtown. But Councilmember Canlin, we do not have an economic impact analysis completed for the yard in the Heritage District.
Mayor, and you say 93% just in the Heritage District, or is that town-wide?
Mayor, members of the council, the 93% sales tax collection increase represents just the Heritage District.
Do you have a number on that?
I do not have a number on that, Councilmember Canlin. However, I'd be happy to follow up with that and try to provide that for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mayor, members of the council, I'll just add a point to that. Part of what we talked to you about at our retreat was our ability now to look at areas and derive statistics and data based on tax revenue generation and the like, land use. I do know that it's probably been a year and a half ago, I had finance and John Olson, who handles our taxes, pull a general number for me out of the Heritage District proper, and I want to say it was about $3.3 million a year we were deriving out of the Heritage District, and that would have been prior to a lot of these new structures being built and the new restaurants and establishments opening. But that's certainly an analysis we can do for you going forward as we continue to find ways to maximize the return to the community and the redevelopment of the district. And I think what we'll find is we're getting a lot greater return per acre, per square foot than any other part of the community because of the density we're creating down there.
Thank you, Patrick. With that, I will entertain a motion.
I have a comment. So Dan, while you're up there, and again, this is just for the public to know, in the development agreement, there is a section here called the Public Pedestrian Plaza. Dan, you want to share more about what that could look like? Because I know that Mary Ellen is very much involved in the arts, and there's always been a need to provide another type of pedestrian public area for that might be a very vital part of Gilbert. And maybe you could just share a little bit about what that might look like.
Certainly. Mayor, members of the council, the specific question from Councilmember Cook relating to the plaza is a pedestrian and vehicular plaza that complements the overall site. It is envisioned to be sort of a cultural and a community amenity for gathering and for pedestrians to interact. Some of the general vision behind the pedestrian plaza and how it interacts with the community is that things like a community stage and or community events have been discussed, certainly serving in a pulling effect of pedestrians and bicycles off of the power line trail into this development along Hearn Way, and then ultimately south, carrying forward a joint effort done by Planning and Maricopa Association of Governments. There's this component known as sort of a pedestrian walkway or a pedestrian plaza, which in essence is a way to create more of a pedestrian feel for what is generally characterized as the alleyways. And so it's a way for it to interact in a very positive way that creates a flow of pedestrians. And the vision is, again, to take those pedestrians and to take those bicycles off the power line trail, interact with this particular development in a very public and engaging way, to which art could certainly complement the area, extend south through the developments and connect down to the railroad tracks, and then ultimately southbound into around the Elliott area. And so this joint effort with Pedestrian Plaza, with Planning, and with Maricopa Association of Governments had identified almost exclusively a pedestrian pathway on the west side of the road, and this plaza could create a similar like feel on the east side of the road, creating synergies and relationships with pedestrians and development. I'm not sure if that description is what you were looking for, Councilmember Cook, but that's generally the high-level thought and vision associated with this plaza that would allow for pedestrians and vehicles to interact.
Is this something, I know the developer was intended to help create that. Is there plans that we might have the community participate in some stakeholders of how that might look like as it relates to giving them feedback and so forth?
Excellent question, Mayor, members of the council. Anytime that we're able to engage the public in these type of amenities in our downtown, we always end up with a better product. It has been said that what we do together, and I think an opportunity to engage the public and get their thoughts and opinions on how this might interact with the development, the adjacencies, the pedestrians, et cetera, is an excellent idea.
Yeah, thank you, Dan.
All right, seeing no more comments from the council, we will entertain a motion.
Mayor, I would like to motion that we approve of agenda item number 1.
We have a motion by Councilmember Cook. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Peterson. Please vote. That motion carries with a 5-2 vote. Thank you. And with that, our single agenda item, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.